Morning, everyone. Welcome to the big BI battle. It's hosted by DataCubed, by myself, Matt Dent. Hope you can all see the screen I've shared and can hear us okay. So this is our sort of opening slide. This is us in black and white, looking much more attractive than we do live in color. So myself and BI developer at DataCubed. Today is all about having a sort of competition, a battle between three big BI tools. So we're talking about Power BI, Qlik, and Tableau. Myself, I'm going to stand on the side of Power BI. I've been using Power BI for quite a few years now. I originally actually came from a Tableau background, switched over and also still use Tableau. DataCubed, we're kind of tool agnostic, so we try and use whichever tool is right for the client at the time. Got some very special guests today in Richard Speigal and Matt Williams, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Richard. I kind of got a dream job, really. I get to do BI all day long for Nationwide Building Society, so got armfuls of data to play with. I'm from originally a Tableau background, then Power BI, and now Qlik. I only joined the society last July, so I haven't been using it that long. And approached it with some trepidation, being a massive Tableau fan, but I've found the journey actually pleasantly really surprising. So I'll be repping for Qlik today, and hopefully changing some opinions on what Qlik can and can't do.
Cool. Matt Williams, BI Analyst at Lloyds Banking Group. I've worked at in a number of different sectors, startups, agencies, done some freelance work. Primarily use Tableau, but have a fair amount of experience in Power BI as well. So yeah, I'll be repping Tableau, unsurprisingly.
Thanks, both. So I'll put this up here. This is Gartner's Magic Quadrant of BI. So it splits them into 4 different categories. Today we're focusing on the top right, which is the leaders. So there's actually 4 tools in there. As someone pointed out on LinkedIn to us the other day, there's Microsoft, which is Power BI, Tableau, Qlik, and ThoughtSpot. Now we're not speaking about ThoughtSpot today, mainly because, well, I haven't used it. Don't know about you two.
We have got it in the society actually. Qlik's our main tool. We have got a few hundred users actually on ThoughtSpot. I really don't know massive amounts on it from a technical point of view, but I have seen it in production. So if anybody wants to throw in a question, I can at least try and answer it. But Qlik is definitely, yeah, the top 3 I think in terms of volume are miles ahead. ThoughtSpot is a good tool though. Slightly different tool, not quite traditional BI.
Absolutely. So I think with Tableau, Power BI, Qlik, well, especially Tableau and Power BI, it's sort of aimed at any size business, any scale. I don't know if ThoughtSpot is also on that sort of level, or is it more just an enterprise tool?
I would see it probably more in an enterprise space. I think the big difference is how it works. I think the 3 main BI tools, it's very much a guided approach to analytics. So you're designing dashboards and you're looking to lead people through a sort of data story a certain way, I guess. With ThoughtSpot, it's much more free-flowing tool. In theory, a user can ask absolutely anything of the data, and they build up what are called their own pinboards. So it's probably right to separate them to an extent, or at least for the purposes of this morning, because they work in very, very different ways, those tools. I think ThoughtSpot is it's an unguided approach to analytics, which is it's difficult to dovetail the two. There are some really good use cases for it, but it'll probably get a bit complicated to try and mix the metaphors this morning. So
exactly, great. So I thought I'd throw this up here to start off with as well. This is something I posted on LinkedIn recently, and this is Google Trends. So what are people searching for? Are people searching Power BI? Are people searching Qlik? Searching Tableau? You can see Power BI is bit of a newer tool. So back in 2015, 2016, no one was really searching for it. It's now overtaken. It's at the top. Power BI is clearly winning from that. People are loving it. Everyone's searching for it. Qlik, is it on a downward trend? What are your thoughts on that? Let the battle commence.
Let the battle commence. I'd say it's very much an enterprise. My experience of it is it's an enterprise tool. I'm sure they wouldn't want to pigeonhole it completely that way, but it is an enterprise thing really. And in that sense, it's got a smaller audience. But it can do more, so it's going to win.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Tableau there, Mr. Williams?
Well, I think it's on a very slight rise, which I'll take. But I think it's unsurprising that Power BI has got the most searches. It's part of the Microsoft stack. So it's kind of the transition from using Excel, etc., is probably simpler moving into Power BI than bringing in a whole new tool or whole new tech stack. It's pretty interesting, actually, looking at the stock price of Tableau. I looked at it a while ago and checked it again. And so they had a big dip in, I think, 2015, 2016 when Power BI came out, and recovered pretty strongly since then. So it's back above those levels. I think it shows that there is quite a big differentiation, I think, between the tools. I don't think it's, specifically you're replacing one with the other. So I think it makes for a good discussion about what that differentiation is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you mentioned differentiation there. So let's explore them in a few sort of key themes. So the first one we wanted to talk about was connectability. We haven't made different slides on this one for Power BI or Qlik or Tableau because, well, this is a list from Power BI and that list is large. You can connect to so many different data sources, whether that's through Azure, through Amazon, through your Excel, through a CSV, into SharePoint, online sources, Google Analytics. I think we can all agree that as a BI tool, as Power BI, as Tableau, as Qlik, they're all super strong in this category. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if we could have got into a real rabbit hole on this one, trying to compare what connections they all make. And they're all, they're BI leaders. They all make amazing connections. I would say if any of these tools, if you've got data sources that these tools can't connect to, then probably worry about your data sources more than worrying about the tools. They are all very, very good at this. There's not a lot they can't do. And certainly if you've got difficult data sources, it's typical that you might have an additional ETL system anyway for extracting data from one place and lifting and shifting it to another. So given that I think if we got 6 themes to get through this morning, Matt, I think that gives us like 90 seconds or 2 minutes each on each theme. So probably not a lot to say on this one.
No, so we're happy there. So what we're going to do at the end of each of these sections, we're going to do a sort of scores on the doors. We're going to see who's won. We're going to score them at points. So 3 points for a first, 2 for a second, 1 for a last place. Should we just give them all 3 points? Happy with that?
Works for me.
All right, I'm actually writing these down live. Test my advanced math skills at the end. So next theme is visibility. This little vid is live. No, this is sped up. This is Power BI. This is just using the standard visuals that come inbuilt with Power BI. So I think for sort of 95% of use cases, there's going to be a visual there inbuilt that you can use. I've imported a theme file. I've imported a background image, and I'm putting on filters. I put on titles. And this is just a demonstration how it's so simple and easy, and it has a good range of viz, I'd say, to create 95% of what you can make in a really quick, easy way. There are custom visuals that you can import. Some of them are a little bit sketchy. They're a bit buggy. They're not as easy to format. But as I said, 95% of the time, it's built to ease of use, good viz, easy to train, easy to produce lots of reports, just sticking to some key fundamental guidelines and design principles. That's my take on Power BI. What about you, Rich and Qlik?
Okay, Viz and Qlik. This is the one I'm expecting to kind of lose the battle on a little bit. Viz, probably of the 3 tools, I think it's probably accepted that Qlik is perhaps the weakest on flexibility of Viz. So I'm not going to massively try and persuade you on this, but I will put a few sort of caveats in there before you totally kick it. It's not as flexible as the other tools. It is very vanilla. You can theme it, but it's probably not quite as easy to theme. But this is something here that we built in-house. I think a lot of you may recognize the graphic on the left. It's the FT Visual Vocabulary that they released in 2016. And it's a wonderful poster that people use for figuring out what viz to use in certain situations. So if you've got a distribution problem, for example, it will give you lots of different viz ideas on how to show that and tell that story. I think the Tableau community and now the Power BI community have created workbooks that replicate the FT visual vocabulary. So they split everything up, the workbooks up into sheets and sections that have every different viable visualization. We actually built one in-house. We are going to release it, open source it for the nationwide. We've got an in-house version of the FT, of the visual vocabulary, that we use constantly. And I mean, most importantly, as a conversation starter with users, we fire up the workbook, we start looking through different ways to visualize things, and it creates a really good flowing conversation with users. That workbook's got over 50 different visuals in it, and that's only using vanilla stuff that's out of the box with the standard product. So I would say in an enterprise dashboard environment, you know, this isn't sort of a Tableau public makeover Monday situation. This is day-to-day working dashboards, production dashboards. It's more than enough. So I would defend it on that score. It's not as pretty as the other two tools, but it's hugely functional. There are third-party extensions available, just the same as there are for Power BI. We have trouble with them in a financial services setting because it's always difficult from a security point of view bringing in third-party extensions. But if you don't have those issues, they're very easy to add. And you can build your own custom D3 extensions as well into the tool. So if you're prepared to put a bit of effort in, you can get the tool to do pretty much anything, but it's not the same way as the other tools. So I'll admit defeat on this one, but I would say in a working day-to-day environment, I still think it's fab.
Fair. So yeah, Tableau, I think, before I even start, I think is the number one. I'm going to put it out there now. So you've just got the freedom to build anything you want, anything, you know, from your simple bars, lines, donuts, that kind of thing, to the more advanced visuals that you can see here are sort of the top left. You've got the arc diagram, which shows our customer onboarding, so you can see the flow, where the pain points are, that kind of thing. So the reason we're able to do this is Tableau, instead of just kind of a set visual, build these custom visuals. It has what they call a Cartesian plane. So you have an X and Y axis going back to like GCSE or SATs maths, and essentially using calculations to build out these points and then join them all together. So it gives you pretty much extreme freedom to do what you need, what the business needs, and how they want to view it. Then on top of that, you've got interactive parameter and set actions. So with Power BI and I presume Qlik, you know, if you click on a bar, it will filter, which is, you know, filter the rest of the dashboard, which is really nice. With Tableau, you can use the clicks to change the parameters. So what you're showing, which metrics, which dimensions, how you want to cut the data. So it really allows for a lot more data exploration as well. And then lastly, because of this freedom, you're able to call out pretty much any point on the viz. So if you look at the jitter or the scatter plot, the jitter plot on the right, this is from the UK Digital Index that Lloyds does each year. You can pretty much call out any one of those points. Say you want, you know, if they're above X salary, you can call out, you can change the shape, you can change the color. So in the viz world, we call these pre-attentive attributes. So these are things that your mind unconsciously notices. So if you change the shape of, you know, change one of those circles to a star, you'd see that without really having to think about it. So this allows the user to essentially spend less effort kind of understanding the viz and just being able to draw out the most important points as quickly as possible. So, you know, from your C-level folks, being able to do this, get pretty much anything they want to see instantly. And then for the lower level folks that are kind of looking to explore, they got complete freedom. So you're not looking, you know, you're not making multiple dashboards. You can make one or two views within the dashboard to get a whole bunch of information. So yeah, I think the freedom that Tableau allows brings out obviously with that, you do need a bit more kind of understanding of it. Too bad. And also you can make it much prettier than Power BI and Qlik.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's the end of that section. What do we think? Who's going to take the win?
It's got to be Tableau for me, sadly.
I think I'd have to agree. Power BI is easy and it's fast, but the diversity and flexibility you get with Tableau is second to none, I think.
Yeah. The caveat is, how much do you need that on daily dashboards,
yeah.
I guess. So if you're making a tool decision, think very hard about who your audience is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tableau.
I'd like to fight Power BI in second place.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that one.
Qlik gets 1 point.
It's the only one I'm giving you. This is it.
Right, let's move on. Next section, usability. Now this comes from sort of two angles. It comes as the sort of analyst or the BI developer, and it also comes as sort of end user. In terms of a developer, I'd come from a Tableau background. I found that pretty intuitive to use for at least the sort of more advanced things. When I first went over to Power BI, I didn't like it at all. I found that sort of calculated fields and things like that in Tableau were much more simple. In Power BI, you do have DAX, which is pretty similar to sort of Excel formulas. So if you're used to those, it's quite quick to pick up. There's lots of online help you can use for that. But then in the sort of transform area within Power BI, you have mQuery, which is based off like an F# language. You can also integrate with SQL, you can integrate with R, you can integrate with Python, which is great, high level of flexibility. But it depends where you're coming from. If you're a beginner, this might be too many options, might be a bit daunting. As a more advanced user, it's pretty handy to have that flexibility. So if you are a beginner, maybe just kind of stick with DAX to begin with. It's good functionality. It's easy to drag and drop fields around. And using the tool to actually create dashboards, create reports, it is super straightforward and it's quick and it's easy. And for an end user, say if I publish this up into the cloud, I think it's pretty straightforward to use. All the charts sort of interact with each other, so you can click on a bar and it will highlight your line somewhere else, or it will filter depending on how you've set it up. So from usability, I think there's sort of a mixed bag depending on your sort of ability within as an analyst, really.
Right, Qlik. A lot of you coming from Tableau or Power BI backgrounds I'm going to ask you to bear with me on this, because you need to try the product and actually sit it in front of users to kind of trust me on this. Of the three tools, I think this gets the best. It certainly had the best reaction I've seen from users in the shortest possible time. The little demo I've put together here, this is a really advanced analysis of our Christmas party guest list. And who was eating what. And what it's showing is a feature that I love that all three products have, is cross-filtering. So I'm clicking one chart and all the other charts are changing. And if you watch as it's clicking, you'll see there's a little top area just there. I'm just clicking off, it said cheesecake. There's a little search icon and a magnifier, but it's called the selection bar. Now, in Qlik, you can build up selections very, very quickly without having to create filters manually on your dashboards. And it's super intuitive. So you can go from a very sort of 60,000 foot view of your data, start applying selections with free text search as well, which is enormously fast. It's got a really powerful engine. And before you know it, you've drilled from, looking at millions of records down to 10. In a few clicks. And the main point, and why I think this should score on usability, is this is out of the box. The other two products, certainly the way that cross-filtering works or setting up static filters, the dashboard designer has to put quite a lot of effort and thought into doing that. They have to be configured a certain way. In Qlik, they don't. This is out of the box functionality, and I always get. It's lovely when we get new users actually onboarded in the business, and you start showing them this stuff, and they very quickly just their minds are blown by it. It gets such a good reaction and such a good conversation started. So you're gonna have to go on trust if you haven't used the product. I mean, you do need to touch and feel it a bit, but if you haven't used the product, then take it on spec. Of the three tools, if I'm sitting next to a business user, Qlik wins for me on this.
So I've gone slightly from the developer side of things in terms of usability. I think a bit similar to Matt. So yeah, as a beginner with Tableau, you've got the show me function, which is in the top right if you're looking at your desktop view. So you've got 24 relatively simple common visualizations that Tableau essentially build for you automatically. You just need to put the right number of dimensions and measures in there. This makes it super easy to build out what you want really, really quickly. And then as you advance a little further, you have the calculated fields, similar kind of thing to Excel, to Power BI, where you're using logic to get what you want. I found this generally simpler than writing DAX. It's a bit more wordy, so it's easier to work out where your errors are. There's not as many commas when you're writing if statements, if it's a nested if or something like that. And then these can sit, these calculated fields can sit on the marks card. So that's where you pull out the really interesting insights. So that's where the customization comes from. You can change the color, size, shape, chuck them into your tooltips or your labels, keep everything really, really customized, which is pretty useful. I think in a business setting, it gives the business user, as I said before, makes it as easy for them as possible to pull out the insight that they're looking for. Then you got the parameter actions. So these are customizable to set up within the dashboard. So you specify which kind of visualization that you'd like to use as the base to change everything, other parts of the dashboard. And then you have Tableau Public, which I've chucked into this section because kind of an open forum for any Tableau user using Tableau Public, which is free to download, essentially the latest version. And a lot of very, very clever people who are much smarter than me put their latest viz generally using public data on there, which you can then kind of download, reverse engineer, and kind of use the bits that might be more suitable for your business dashboards. This makes the UX and UI of Tableau really, really nice for the end user because it's not as much as filtering and clicking on filters. You're able to interact with it by kind of more intuitively, I think, kind of like a modern day website versus your website from sort of the 2010, early 2010 era kind of thing.
Go on, sorry, Karen.
And last thing I was going to say, I'd say the main drawback with Tableau is building out the dashboards, because you build each viz separately in a different tab. You draw them together within a single dashboard. So you can essentially drag in sheets. This can be quite time consuming. Definitely the pain point for me, and I think many others, like for example, you can't copy paste an image. You have to then go through and insert it again. So it is time consuming to build out a dashboard, I think, compared to my experience with Power BI. But you get the flexibility, but then that comes with spending longer on the tool. So bit of a double-edged sword, really.
Thing I think I'd add on that, if you've come from a sort of SQL background and you use SQL quite well, I'd say that translates maybe better to the Tableau sort of calculated field language than it does to sort of DAX or like the M query or anything like that in Power BI.
But I'd say that DAX is very similar to Excel.
Exactly. So depending on where you've come from, you might find something a bit easier to pick up or not to pick up. So end of usability section. Thoughts?
I'll let you go first because I'm going to fight you.
Good job this is virtual. I think I'd concede this one's Tableau. I'd say maybe from a very, very beginner state, Power BI might be easier and more user-friendly to build something really simple. And if you want to build a dashboard, it's quicker and easier. I found Tableau pretty fiddly. But from a sort of language or maybe intermediate analysis, I'd say Tableau is probably stronger. So I'm a bit split there.
I was actually going to go the opposite. I was going to put, in terms of speed and ease, I would have put Power BI above Tableau, especially say as a small business owner. If it's not your full-time job, I think if it's your full-time job, Tableau wins, but if it's something that you're kind of building on the side to keep track of your KPIs and whatnot, then I would choose Power BI. But as a developer of the tools, I'd choose Tableau. And I'm sure Rich is going to argue for Qlik very strongly here.
Yeah, well, actually, for the same reason, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, if I'm doing if I work on a side project, the first tool I pick up is Tableau because I can do anything with it. I can make it spin. It's fabulous. But we talked about a small business setting, but it's the same in the enterprise when you make these decisions, because if you're choosing a tool, you've got a cost of training ultimately. And I think the issue with Tableau is whilst it can do everything, it needs a much higher level of experience and training than the other two tools for me. And certainly I think users I mean, you know, a Tableau dashboard that's well designed by a very skilled developer can be a wonderful user experience for business users. But if it's not brilliantly designed, it can be terrible, and it can dent people's faith in BI. So I think for me, I'd go Qlik, Power BI, and then Tableau. And I'd go Qlik first because it's notably quicker to train developers on Qlik than the other two tools from my experience. And if you're making a business decision on running a BI team, that reduces your costs. And I think that matters in that context. I think we're split on this one because I think it's horses for courses. It depends on the audience member. I think in a small business setting, probably Power BI, because it's in the stack and it is easy to pick up if you've ever used Excel. I think Tableau, if you're doing independent analysis or you're in an analytics setting, makes sense because it's flexible. But in an enterprise BI environment where it's very much day-to-day, you know, workhorse dashboards, it's Qlik for me. So are we allowed a split decision?
So what are the scores? Do they all win? Do they all get through?
Probably all win depending on your use case.
They are all good in their own right, I guess, depending on who you are. Well, let's move on then. Transformability. How does it sort of manipulate the data within the tool? This is This is Power BI sort of dedicated area within the software, so it's built in, and it's called Transform, and it is actually quite powerful. When I first started using it, I wasn't that much of a fan, but actually the more you use it, the better you realize it is. You have sort of three main options. One is to use the M query that based off F#, which is more of a sort of technical area to use. You can also use just the formula bar at the top. Everything is sort of logged on the right in those applied steps, so you can sort of work through and see what you've done before. It keeps a history, and you can click on any of those steps and see what your data set looked like at that sort of period in time. I think the thing that's also really good is the sort of built-in functionality at the top. On those toolbars, there's quite a lot you can do just by pressing the buttons. So without having to actually write anything in that formula bar, there's quite a lot you can do just by clicking and playing around, such as things like removing nulls or removing duplicates or changing value names. Again, for more advanced users, you can integrate with R and Python to manipulate data a bit further. Personally, I come from a background where I've done most of my transform, most of my manipulation in SQL before it comes in. A lot more recently, I've had to do a lot more in here, and I think it's actually quite good. Some of the things I like in the View tab is what you can see on the screen now, that sort of value distribution, those column statistics, so you can instantly get a really good picture of sort of how your fields break down, get your counts, your mins, your maxes, distinct values. I find the more you do in here, the slower your report becomes. It does start lagging. It does create, I don't know if it's because it's got that history and that backlog, but it does start affecting your report performance. But yeah, I particularly like that sort of view tab and just being able to have that good clear view and being able to just use buttons instead of having to actually write any sort of code or any sort of formulas to manipulate and transform your data. So from a beginner's perspective, it's pretty good. I think as you do more and get into more advanced analytics, that's where it starts to fall down a little bit.
Cool. Okay. Right. I think this is going to be the strong point for Qlik because I wasn't aware of this. Qlik is an ETL tool. We use it for all our data engineering. I mean, very often in a financial services environment, we can't write SQL because we simply don't have access to the databases to write SQL against. It's very security conscious. So the ability to be able to manipulate data ourselves is really, really important. And Qlik has some just fantastic tools for this, which in fairness, I'm going to call out the other two tools just don't have. I think Power BI certainly to an extent, it's quite powerful what Matt's just showed you. Tableau, it's a separate product. So it kind of starts really easy. There's a drag and drop file loader. You can drop a Excel spreadsheet in and load your data that way. The most powerful part of it that you can see on the text editor on the back screen there is the load script editor, which is kind of, if you've ever used SQL, you'd probably recognize some of the thinking behind it. It's kind of like SQL, but it's also got functions and procedures and loops and things that SQL isn't great at. And it can handle ridiculous volumes of data. And you can transform your data any which way you want into this very compressed format that's very performant, called Qlik's associative engine. So from that point, when I transitioned out of Tableau onto Qlik. I guess for me, this was the bit that made up for the fact that I was a bit disappointed in the Viz, because suddenly I could work in one tool to do all of my ETL and then do the dashboard design, very tightly coupled in it, in exactly the same workspace, which was quite freeing, because very often, you're doing things in chunks. You write some SQL and you extract something out, and then you go to your BI tool, and then you start shaping it maybe some more for the BI environment in a limited way, and then you start the dashboard design process. Whereas I find Qlik is very tightly coupled on this. It's all one environment. And I mean, I guess it depends on what Qlik deployment you get. We've got an enterprise version, and they put some really big computers behind it, but we're quite happy dealing with tens of millions of customer records in data sets. I mean, often we've dealt with transaction level volumes of data in this, and the thing stays performant. It's good. It's really, really good. So if you haven't looked at it before, I would recommend having a play with it if ever you got frustrated with data engineering. Because at the end of the day, we're all BI fans. We want to design dashboards and tell data stories and do analytics. Data engineering is not the sexy end of the job. So give it a go. It's definitely worth a look at. It's quite freeing.
Cool. Yeah, as Rich mentioned, Tableau also has a data transformation tool, which is called Tableau Prep. So this isn't built into Tableau Desktop, but it does come with it. So if you're paying your monthly fee for Tableau Desktop, you would get Prep included. So I'm going to hold my hands up and say I've never actually used it or had to use it. I've, like Matt and Rich, I come from a SQL background, so I do my transformation in SQL, then whack it into Tableau, and then at Lloyds we keep the BI development and the data separate, the data engineering separate, and we don't use Tableau Prep. But from what I've read, what I've seen online, it is very powerful, kind of similar to Power BI in that you can see your measures, you can see the mins and the maxes, you can pivot your tables, remove the nulls, clean the data really easily. But I think because it's a separate product and it's something else that you've got to download if your computers are locked down, like a lot of the companies you work with at agencies and whatnot, I would say in this case that Tableau probably does come third out of the three. This isn't Tableau's strong point in my opinion, but again, I've never used it in real anger, so I'm sure there's someone that may send me some abuse for that, but I'll concede on this one.
Yeah, okay. I think I don't understand why they brought it into a separate package. It would have been so much nicer in one piece of software. I guess a bit like you have in Power BI, where you just click on that transform tab.
It's just the size of the product already.
Yeah, exactly. So thoughts, Richard? You're standing pretty strong.
Qlik, Power BI, Tableau.
Thoughts, Matt? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, happy with that.
I'm happy with that as well, to be honest. Okay, next section, shareability. So In Power BI, the main sort of sharing option, aside from having a PDF, is to share and publish up into the Power BI web app. So hopefully this will say success. There we go. And then you can go into your web app and all your reports can be there. You can create workspaces for them. And people can log in and play around with your filters that you've preset, and all your charts stay interactive. There's quite a lot of good management options in here. You can schedule refreshes to be automated. In Power BI, there's two different ways of connecting to data. There's direct query, so this will always be live. Or if you're using import mode, that's fine. You can schedule refreshes and it does it itself. You can control who can see it, which is quite a manual process, but then you can also control whether they're just like a read-write user, or they can actually kind of manipulate the data in there as well. Main problem is Power BI Pro, which is a license. So if you want to publish up into the cloud, you have to have a Power BI Pro license, which is quite cheap, £7.50 a month per user. I imagine if you're in a big organization, if you're at Lloyds and there was 8,000 of you using it, then that price would soon ramp up pretty fast. You also need a Power BI Pro license if you want to view anything. So if you're an end user and you need to log in to view this, you also need to be paying that £7.50 per month per user. So that's kind of the hindrance, but I guess that is pretty cheap. The only other problem I've experienced with is sort of around data gateways. So if your data isn't held in the cloud, you need to set up a gateway between the Power BI app and the data source, which is quite technical. And that would definitely be a big blocker. Obviously with the licensing, and some obviously I'm the agency, so some clients will have sort of delays and that extra hurdle to jump over IT to try and get those licenses in for them, which can delay or hinder projects. There is also premium licensing, which allows you to sort of embed your dashboards into websites, which is very slick but expensive. You get dedicated resource, you get your own servers for them to be hosted onto, so it tries to remain fast. So shareability, I think it's pretty strong. The app's good. If you can afford to embed it into your own website, then that's pretty slick. But that's when the sort of costs start ramping up.
I'll talk through the points on this slide first, but I should just state you only need a web browser to access Qlik dashboards. That's it. So we have them internally hosted. Qlik does have the cloud edition now as well if you're not hosting it internally, and it's pretty much a per user license cost. So they're enormously shareable because you don't need any software. They work in a browser by default. There are some extra bits that I've called out here. You can click any of the vises on a dashboard and export the source data from the visualization, or as you can see there, you can save it out to an image or put it into a PDF. So that gets used quite a lot day to day. There is another feature called Stories, which I really like the ambition of. It's like an internal version of PowerPoint. And you can create kind of slideshows and embed snapshots of figures at various points in time and add commentary. For some reason, we don't use it barely at all. I think the odd user might have delved around and got the hang of it a bit, but I think maybe it's because it's sort of a clunky version of PowerPoint. The idea is there, but people aren't that familiar with it. So it tends to go a bit unnoticed, and people tend to just save images out of dashboards and pop them into PowerPoint decks or PDFs. So that bit is could be better. That could be a great feature if it was just a bit smoother. There is another option called end printing, actually, which we've just brought in, which is a report distribution service. So it ultimately allows you to automatically email reports, which is, again, a really good idea in theory, but it's still not a massively mature part of the product. So I would sort of push back on all of that on shareability a little bit. We're not actually that keen on any of these options for users, because if they're extracting data or creating manual packs, it's kind of a time-consuming process, and we're trying to drive a culture change where people self-serve and open up a web browser and go straight onto a dashboard and get the numbers there and then. we've started to get people running meetings via live dashboards rather than packs, which is kind of nice to see. I think we'd like to see lots more of it. So Shareability is fantastic because it's browser based. It's got lots of other little tools in there for exporting stuff to make packs up. So, but I just put that proviso in. Let's not make too many more packs. I kind of like BI as a self-service idea.
Yeah, I think we can all agree, as coming from analyst backgrounds, how many hundreds of days we've spent copying and pasting visuals from BI tools into PowerPoints and writing annotations on that. So if there's a solution to that, that's going to save a lot of time and money.
All right, cool. So I talked about Tableau Public already. So there's a bit, but you can't really use it obviously as a business unless you're doing what Matt's doing and trying to kind of gain some LinkedIn points. So you've kind of got three options. So you've got Tableau Reader, which is pretty useful. So Tableau Reader is a free piece of software that you can download as a user. So maybe in an agency setting, Matt's working with a client. They don't want to pay for Tableau Desktop. They don't want to pay, they're only getting 1 or 2 reports per month. So there's not really any need to be signing up to the service. They can download Tableau Reader. Matt can send over a Tableau extract file. So that's got the dashboard and the data sitting behind it. He can fire that over through some sort of secure file transfer system. And then the end user can open the dashboard in Tableau Reader as kind of read-only access. So that's super powerful because it's really cheap for the end user. The obvious downside here is that you're not connected to a live data source. So if it's sort of any more than monthly, you're going to start, it's going to be, could be a bit of a chunk of your working day, just kind of saving and sending. I'm sure there's a smart way to automate that process, but that's not a skill set I have. But I think that's definitely a viable option. Then the other two are Tableau Server and Tableau Online. So at Lloyds, we use, these are both very similar in that they're up in the cloud. When you're publishing workbooks, you're publishing the front end and also the data as a hyper extract. So Tableau's already really made the connections with kind of the front end and the data whilst it's been uploaded. So that definitely drives the speed of the dashboards online. And the main difference between Tableau Server and Tableau Online is servers hosted within Lloyds, for example. Tableau Online is hosted by Tableau. So there is the security risk there. So I'm guessing bigger companies, financial services, etc., will always host it behind their own firewall. With Tableau Online, you can brand it as your client's company, that kind of thing. So definitely has the look and feel of being personalized. Kind of going with what Rich said on getting a kind of a data culture within the business. Lloyds has got, and Matt mentioned, sort of over 8,000 Tableau server users. So, we're churning out reports left, right, and centre for different business areas. And kind of the dream is to not have them ask for the underlying data. I think we're slowly moving away from having to provide like an export button, that type of thing, and taking that data, putting it back into Excel or something so they can do their own analysis. We're kind of getting used to how Tableau works, the look and feel, how you're able to kind of drill in and play around with the data. So yeah, I think shareability Tableau-wise is pretty high. You're able to take really high quality screenshots if they do want to put it into a pack. But again, we're trying to encourage using the server as the primary source when presenting. Something that I myself have been doing recently. When we're starting a project, we really try and ensure that the end user is going to be signing their team up to Tableau Server. So they're not, you're not building this for one person and they're screenshotting it, because then you have to include labels and everything. It clutters everything rather than just being able to kind of hover and get the tooltips, that type of thing. So yeah, I think it's very strong in its shareability, in my opinion. It's got a lot of different options depending on what type of business you are as well.
Nice. What sort of costs are involved in both these two? So obviously the pro license for Power BI, £7.50 a month. It's pretty cheap. What's all about Tableau and Qlik?
You caught me there. I
100%
don't
sure, to
deal
be
with the
honest.
money, mate. Someone else does
Yeah.
that.
It's relatively expensive third thing, isn't it?
I think, yeah, I'd have to double check on there and online. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you got the Tableau reader option.
Yeah. But from a small business, automated reporting, I think for price, you probably won't be able to beat Power BI. For function, there might be a better solution on one of the other tools. So
I'll go split decision on this one, actually.
Yeah.
I think in a small business environment, Power BI all day long.
Yeah.
You know, you can make a workbook, you can share it to your pal just over an email. It's really easy to move stuff around. I think if you've got a slightly bigger audience, then the costs start ramping up. Might look at one of the other two solutions. Certainly in the enterprise, I think it's probably I get the feeling that Tableau or Qlik would probably be cheaper. Without delving the figures too far, but yeah, it's a tough one. Shareability, they're all shareable in different ways, and it's probably worth checking out. If anybody has got any use cases and you want to ask a question actually at the end, I'd be happy to sort of recommend. I'd say it depends entirely on your environment which one is best at shareability.
Sure. Okay, so what do we think? Scores? I feel like none of them have completely solved the problem. I feel like there's always something that's not ideal. I feel like none of them should get a 3. But I feel like maybe they could all get a 2.
A 2 for trying hard, but not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing about Tableau's uploading to Tableau server, I forgot to mention, it can change small little things that work fine on desktop, for example.
We'll give it a 1 then.
Yeah, things changed a little bit. And I think the other thing we wanted to mention was mobile as well, sharing to mobile. Yes. I think all three need a considerable amount of work in this space. I know Tableau, for example, you can make them mobile friendly, but you know, if you have size 12 font on a desktop, looks great. You can't change that to be size 8 font on a mobile. So it's almost getting to the point where you're building out separate dashboards for mobile or for kind of desktop or tablet.
I massively back that point. It's the weakest point of all the BI tools at the moment is mobile use. I mean, actually, Tableau Public and you know, Vizability, which we all love, but it's a really public view of what's bad about BI tools, because you see some fantastic Viz come out every day, and you're probably sitting there reading it on social media. You click the link, and everything just doesn't work. It falls apart. It's horrible user experience. And it's a bit unsaid in BI circles, actually. People are not calling them out on this. And I think they need to. We need a much better mobile experience from all three products.
100%. And like, if you open a Power BI workbook, it looks all right. Obviously, then you're in landscape mode, which is different to your normal sort of phone experience. There's a mobile sort of inbuilt function in Power BI. But again, it's just like building a whole report, building the whole dashboard all over again. So maybe they should all get 1.
1. Let's go 1.
1.
We can move the industry.
Yeah, for the moment.
So our millions of viewers. Right, next. Alertability. So I threw this in here, and I don't think Rich and Matt thought I was going to be going down this theme. So what do I mean? I mean automated alerts. So I own a shoe company, and I've sold 1,000 pairs in one day, and I need an alert so that I can order some more stock, whether that comes in an email, whether that comes in a Slack message, whatever your company's got. Now in Power BI, you can build these in. You can only do it on KPI or gauge charts or cards. So in terms of limitation, there's only a few visuals you can actually put these on. You can also only put them on dashboards, not on reports. With dashboards are sort of a combination of lots of features from different reports dragged into one place. So I feel it's pretty weak. It's kind of a new thing to BI, I think. But yeah, and also a user can set up their own alerts, but that won't alert anyone else. Or the BI developer can set up alerts, but it's very limited in who gets visibility of those alerts.
Qlik, so the one on the left is this end printing product that we talked about earlier. That does have the ability to set thresholds and triggers when data changes, so you can send out alerts. I'm kind of with Matt on the same stance. Qlik doesn't do this particularly well at the moment. Certainly end printing isn't a great product. It feels a bit unfinished. So it's doable, but not brilliant. I did get a demo of the product you can see there on the right, InsightBot, which is much, much smarter. This is a product that has natural language queries. It's like a chatbot, ultimately, for data. And it looks, well, it certainly looked in the demo enormously impressive. You know, how many mortgages have we sold last Tuesday? And can you know, cross-check that with footfall or something? Those sort of questions in a very natural style sort of work with them. It's got user-driven alerting on there, so users can set their own alerts up, and it integrates with Slack or Teams and whatever, so that you know you can, as soon as a threshold is changed on your data, it pings out to your messaging tools. It all sounds great. Unfortunately, it's an additional product, so I'm sort of fluttering my eyelids, my eyelashes at the moment of my boss. If he's watching, please can we have InsightBot? I think we'll have to come up with some extra cash, but it looks really, really promising, and I kind of hope it's the way BI is going to go, because I think it democratizes data, but we're not quite there yet. So yeah, definitely right direction. Could try harder.
Yeah, so I guess similar to both Power BI and Qlik, you can set your alerts based on a condition. So it's definitely got a lot more flexibility than Power BI. You can do on pretty much, and as per Tableau in general, you can do on anything that you feel that's going to be something that's important. I think this is only done on the server. I say I think because I've never actually been in a position where I need to set these up for anyone, but I believe it's all done on the server. So if you're just using desktop, you won't be able to do this. Someone can prove me wrong if they know more about that. And yeah, you can ping it out to the people, the recipients that are needed, providing they're on the server as well. But I think one of the biggest problems is getting overwhelmed with emails, just because you get tens, maybe hundreds if you're in that situation of emails a day. Do you need more coming through? And then the flip side is, if you're that busy, maybe it is really important to be receiving these. So I'd say Tableau does a decent job. I don't think you can connect through anything other than email, from my understanding. So again, it could do with a bit more flexibility there. But I think it does the job. I wouldn't say it does it incredibly well. To be honest, I'm not totally sure how they could improve upon it, because it's kind of a feature that we all get too much information daily. So really making sure that you are alerted to the things that are really important. In Matt's thing about shoe sales, is this something that can be automated rather than just pinging yourself? So yeah, I'd say Alertability, I'd put it above Power BI, but it's not because it's brilliant, it's because it's more flexible.
Thoughts about scores then?
I'd go Tableau because it's the simplest and most elegant, probably then Power BI, then Qlik because end printing is not very good. I guess if you can afford InsightBot, then I'd put Qlik at the top, but it is very much an add-on. So no, Tableau, Power BI, Qlik.
So we're saying 3, 2, 1. I was going to be harsh and give them all A, but which changes because I just did a tally up of the scores, because that's our last topic, and they were all on 11.
Oh.
So you sure we want to do that, because that puts Qlik in last place?
No.
So no joke, we didn't plan this. They all came to 11, but we'll go through that in a minute. First, we thought we'd put a few honourable mentions before we talk about Google Data Studio. On the theme of Alertability, there are some other tools that are sort of taking that by storm, really. I think SciSense are doing a really good job on that. They're doing what Matt says, where it's not just an alert, but it can sort of trigger a response, whether that order's stopped or something like that. I think Looker are doing a really good job on that as well. That's another one of the big tools. Rich sent this over, and I think it's really interesting to talk about that. Rich, want to share some insight on your Google Data
If you've
Studio?
not played with it, I had a play with this about 6 months ago, and I actually loved it. Google Data Studio. There's a few things to commend it. I think probably first and foremost is it's completely free, and it doesn't have the range of the sort of power of Viz or the power of connections that obviously the big three do. But on the basis it's completely free, I think it's fantastic. And if you'd never used BI before, definitely use it. It's surprisingly powerful, actually. The other thing that I really loved about it, actually, I think this makes the best job at the moment of shareability. Certainly, if you're in the Google ecosystem, you've got a Google account, you're on Google Drive, it's very easy to share a Google Data Studio dashboard. You can share them privately to other people with Drive accounts. So you can share them completely publicly. It's got auto refresh on the data. So if you're new to BI and never played with a BI tool before, I'd definitely take a look at it. It's a surprisingly good tool for a completely free product.
Sorry, Matt, you go.
Cheers. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I used it a couple of years ago for some freelance work, and it was quite limited then, but they are putting an awful lot of work, get weekly messages from Data Studio about the new features and new functionality that they've added. So yeah, it's improving a lot. And obviously it's not as powerful as the three we've talked about, but it's free. So kind of take that. If you're not working with millions and millions of records, then do you need that power? And I guess the other thing is, because it's a Google product, it links up really well with other Google products like Google Analytics. So the majority of websites I've ever worked with, especially smaller ones, are Google Analytics. They use Google Analytics. So being able to hook everything from the digital side up with your back-end data, I think is really powerful as well. You can draw some quite nice kind of inferences from that.
Yeah, I think I was going to go down that route as well. I've been speaking to quite a few clients recently who are talking about going down the route of Google BigQuery. And I know that this hooks up really seamlessly with BigQuery. And my other point was also going to be around Google Analytics. It's all Google, it's all part of the same sort of deck, same platform. So I think integration there worked really well. So good spot there, Rich. So brings us to this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see our lovely faces. So scores all changed in the last round.
Qlik, I think we should call it a tie.
So, well, let's do our scores first. Qlik gets 12 points. Power BI 13, Tableau 14.
Thank you. Cheers, Rich.
He's going to leave now. I think
I'm a happy boss now.
I think we can all say, though, depending on, it really depends on who you are, what your use case is, what your business case is, whether you're a small company, a medium enterprise.
I think I'd offer some, if you're making the choice on a BI tool, I'd offer a bit of reassurance on, because if you're picking any of those three products, you're not making the wrong decision. Yeah. They're all great. They've all got nuances that may fit some situations better than others, but you'd never be making a wrong decision picking any of them.
Yeah, for sure. I was just looking at our Q&A. We had a question from Gina Bartlett, who's just started a new role, and she has actually had to dash, but she'll watch this on demand, I'm sure. Her question is, she's implementing Power BI at a new role. She's project manager across a couple of different teams for dashboard reporting. Do you have or know any good resources that would be suitable as an introduction to Power BI that won't scare people? So, little plug for myself, maybe. I've been, as part of Data Cubes, I'm making an online training course for Power BI. So I think we're up to episode 10 at the moment. We're talking about starting from simple, how to get it, how to connect to data sources through to choosing the right visual for the right data, basic design principles, generating themes, that sort of thing. So if anyone's interested in wanting to have access to those, because they are private at the moment, then give me a message and I'll send you a link to those videos. Otherwise, actual Microsoft Power BI online forums, there's a lot of resource. You can just Google whatever question you might want, and there will be an answer. I think Rich's got a book.
Got a book recommendation, actually. This is a very general recommendation. It's not Power BI specific. There's not actually a lot of literature out there in the BI space. I'm just trying to get this in the right spot. But this is a book that's completely dedicated to its case studies of dashboards. So I kind of like this book. I'm not sure it entirely nails it. There's still a fair amount to read, but it gives you real world business case studies, and then it takes you through dashboard design and dashboard thinking, and it's kind of a good design and data literacy piece. It gives you lots of nice examples of how dashboards actually get designed, and sometimes where they go completely wrong, and what works and what doesn't. So there's some background reading if you're new to dashboard design. Definitely that's worth a look at. The Big Book of Dashboards, published by Wiley. Steve Wexler, I can't read it from the back. Jeffrey Schaefer and Andy Cockgrave.
Those are all Tableau folk, aren't they?
Touche, Mr. Williams.
If anyone has any other questions, feel free to write them now. So we've overrun a bit, or you can get in contact with us at DataCubes or Rich or Matt, whether that's by email or on LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect and ask us any questions. Do either of you have anything else you'd like to say?
Good. Thanks for everybody for watching.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Okay.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, all.